There's only 25 cents credit on it! You can't spend more than 25 cents! That means you can't afford to buy all these...
Imagine it's 1995. You've just burst through the front door. Backpack hits the floor with a thud and you're already wrestling your little brother for the remote control. The afternoon cartoon block is about to start and you're armed with a bag of Dunkaroos and zero homework motivation. This was the decade when animation studios threw everything at the wall to see what would stick. Environmental superheroes, shark teenagers, space rabbits, and things so weird that even Nickelodeon said, maybe not. The 90s were animation's experimental phase, producing shows so wonderfully bizarre, they make today's cartoons look downright normal. Let's dive into 10 forgotten gems that somehow made it to air. 10. Street Sharks. What happens when you take the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles formula and replace ninja with sharks and logic with whatever sounds cool? You get Street Sharks, the 1994 masterpiece that asked the important question, what if teenagers could turn into hammerheads and fight crime underwater? The show followed 4 brothers who got transformed into half-human, half-shark hybrids after their scientist father's experiments went wrong. Armed with the battle cry Jawsome and an inexplicable ability to swim through concrete, they fought the evil Dr. Paradigm and his army of genetic monstrosities. Each brother had a different shark personality. Ripster was the leader, Jab was the boxer, Streaks was the extreme sports enthusiast, and Big Slamu was, well, big. The best part? They drove underwater motorcycles. Not boats, not submarines, motorcycles that somehow worked beneath the waves. The show lasted 40 episodes of pure aquatic absurdity, complete with environmental messages about ocean pollution delivered by teenagers who could literally bite through steel. It was TMNT logic taken to its most ridiculous extreme, and somehow it worked. 9. Mighty Max. In 1993, Mattel looked at their competitor's success with He-Man and thought, what if we made our own fantasy adventure, but with a baseball cap instead of a sword? Enter Mighty Max, the grunge generation's answer to muscle-bound barbarian heroes. Max was just a regular American teenager until he received a mysterious red baseball cap that could open portals to anywhere in the universe. Suddenly, he was Earth's chosen protector, guided by Virgil, a wisecracking owl, and protected by Norman, a Viking warrior who'd been guarding Max's bloodline for centuries. Together, they battled Skullmaster, an ancient evil who looked like he escaped from a death metal album cover. The show was surprisingly dark for a toy commercial disguised as children's entertainment. Max regularly witnessed apocalyptic scenarios, fought genuine monsters, and dealt with the psychological weight of being humanity's last hope while trying to pass algebra. Episodes featured everything from zombie dinosaurs to interdimensional demons, all filtered through the lens of a kid who just wanted to play video games. It was cosmic horror meets after-school special, and it somehow made perfect sense. 8. Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars. Imagine if George Lucas had created Star Wars, but everyone was a cartoon animal and the Empire was replaced by fascist amphibians. That's Bucky O'Hare, the 1991 space opera that treated interplanetary warfare between mammals and reptiles with complete seriousness. Captain Bucky O'Hare was a green rabbit who commanded the starship Righteous Indignation in humanity's fight against the Toad Empire. His crew included a 4-armed duck, a one-eyed cat, and Willie DeWitt, the only human in the universe who got teleported from his bedroom into this cosmic conflict. The Toads were led by the computer, an artificial intelligence that had enslaved their entire species and sought to eliminate all warm-blooded life. The show featured genuine space battles, political intrigue, and character development that wouldn't have been out of place in a serious science fiction series. But it was also a cartoon where a rabbit pilot shouted, "Let's croak us some toads," before engaging in aerial combat. The animation was surprisingly sophisticated, the voice acting was top-notch, and the theme song was an absolute banger that's still stuck in 90s kids' heads today. 7. The Tick. Before superhero parodies became trendy, there was the Tick, a big blue bug-themed hero whose superpower was being completely oblivious to how ridiculous everything around him was. Premiering in 1994, this animated adaptation of Ben Edlund's comic book was absurdist comedy disguised as a superhero show. The Tick fought crime in the city alongside his nervous sidekick Arthur, a former accountant in a moth costume. Their rogues gallery included Chairface Chippendale, a villain with a wooden chair for a head who tried to carve his name on the moon, and the evil Midnight Bomber, What Bombs at Midnight, whose plan was exactly what his name suggested. What made the Tick special was its commitment to treating completely insane situations with absolute sincerity. The Tick would deliver profound-sounding speeches about justice and heroism while battling a man made entirely of bread or a gang of criminals dressed as household appliances. The show's genius was that everyone except the Tick seemed aware of how weird their world was, but nobody could quite figure out how to deal with it. It was philosophical comedy wrapped in superhero nonsense. 6. SWAT Kats, the Radical Squadron. Take Top Gun, add anthropomorphic cats, throw in some environmental themes, and you've got SWAT Kats, the 1993 show that asked whether Maverick and Iceman would be even cooler if they had whiskers and fought pollution monsters. T-Bone and Razor were mechanics by day, vigilante pilots by night, protecting Mega Cat City in their high-tech fighter jet, the Turbo Cat. They battled everything from evil robots to supernatural creatures, usually while the incompetent Enforcer Squadron fumbled around below. Their nemeses included Dr. Viper, a mutated snake scientist, and the Metallicats, robot gangsters with Brooklyn accents. The show was surprisingly sophisticated for a cartoon about flying cats. The aerial combat sequences were genuinely thrilling, with detailed animation that made every dogfight feel cinematic. It lasted only 2 seasons, partly because it was too violent for some network standards, proving that even cartoon cats couldn't escape the culture wars of the 90s. 5. Exo Squad. What happens when you take the complex mecha warfare of Japanese anime and try to squeeze it into American Saturday morning television? You get Exo Squad, the 1993 series that somehow convinced network executives that kids wanted to watch a show about interplanetary war, genetic engineering, and the ethics of artificial intelligence. Set in the 22nd century, the show followed the Exofleet's war against the Neo-Sapiens, a race of artificially created humans who had rebelled against their creators. Pilots fought in powered exoskeletons called E-frames, but this wasn't just robot versus robot action. Episodes dealt with war crimes, racial prejudice, political manipulation, and the moral complexity of fighting former slaves who had become genocidal conquerors. The show featured ongoing storylines, character deaths that actually mattered, and plot threads that took entire seasons to resolve. It was essentially Gundam for American audiences, complete with detailed mecha designs and surprisingly mature themes. Characters struggled with PTSD, made morally questionable decisions, and faced real consequences for their actions. 4. Pirates of Dark Water. Hanna-Barbera looked at the success of fantasy epics and decided to create their own Game of Thrones for kids. Pirates of Dark Water premiered in 1991 with the ambitious goal of telling a serialized adventure story across an alien ocean world threatened by an expanding force of pure evil. Prince Ren sailed the seas of Myr, searching for the 13 treasures of rule, the only artifacts that could stop the Dark Water from consuming his world. Accompanied by his crew, including the pirate captain Ayaz, the eco-mage Tula, and the monkey bird Nidalee, Ren faced sea monsters, rival pirates, and the constant threat of the malevolent substance that turned everything it touched into twisted nightmare fuel. The The show featured gorgeous hand-drawn animation, complex world building, and storylines that assumed kids could follow multi-episode plot arcs. The dark water itself was genuinely creepy, a writhing black substance that corrupted everything it touched. Unfortunately, the series was canceled after just 21 episodes, leaving Ren's quest unfinished and fans wondering what treasures remained unfound. 3. Captain Planet and the Planeteers. In 1990, media mogul Ted Turner decided that children's television needed more environmental awareness and fewer subtlety. The result was Captain Planet and the Planeteers, a show so committed to its ecological message that it made recycling feel like a moral imperative and littering seem like a war crime. 5 teenagers from different continents were chosen to wield magical rings representing earth, fire, wind, water, and heart. When pollution problems got too big to handle, they could combine their powers to summon Captain Planet, a blue-skinned superhero with a green mullet who fought environmental destruction with the power of friendship and really obvious metaphors. The villains were wonderfully over-the-top eco-terrorists, with names like Luton Plunder, Dr. Blight, and Sly Sludge, who seemed dedicated to destroying the environment purely for the sake of being evil. Every episode ended with Captain Planet delivering environmental tips directly to the audience, breaking the fourth wall to remind kids that the power was theirs to save the planet. 2. Widget the World Watcher. In 1990, someone decided that what children's television really needed was a purple shape-shifting alien who solved Earth's problems through kindness and understanding. Widget the World Watcher was the result, a show so aggressively wholesome that it made Mr. Rogers look cynical. Widget was an extraterrestrial being who could transform into any shape necessary to help people in need, whether someone was dealing with bullying, environmental problems, or just feeling sad. Widget would appear with his magical abilities and infinite patience to make everything better. He spoke in simple, gentle phrases and always found non-violent solutions to every conflict. The show was created by Peter Keefe, who wanted to make educational television that taught social skills and emotional intelligence. Each episode tackled real-world issues like prejudice, poverty, and environmental destruction, but filtered through Widget's optimistic alien perspective. The animation was colorful and fluid, with Widget's transformations providing visual creativity that kept kids engaged. 1. The Brothers Grunt. And here we reach the peak of 90s cartoon weirdness. The Brothers Grunt, MTV's 1994 experiment in pure animation chaos that was so bizarre, it got canceled for being too strange for the network that gave us Beavis and Butthead. Created by Danny Antonucci, who would later make Ed, Edd n Eddy, this show followed 5 caveman-like brothers who communicated entirely through grunts, groans, and various bodily functions. There was no dialogue, no traditional plot structure, and absolutely no explanation for anything that happened on screen. Episodes featured the brothers encountering surreal situations that defied logic, physics, and good taste. The animation was deliberately crude and unsettling, with character designs that looked like fever dreams and sound effects that came from the deepest corners of human discomfort. It was experimental animation pushed to its absolute limit, testing how weird television could get before audiences just gave up. The show lasted only 1 season because even MTV's famously tolerant audience found it too disturbing. It was avant-garde television disguised as a cartoon, proving that sometimes creative freedom can go too far, even for the network that pioneered weird programming. The 90s gave us animation's wildest experiments. Shows canceled not for being bad, but for being too ambitious or strange. Which forgotten gem deserves resurrection?